Black Sabbath were a British heavy metal and hard rock band formed in 1968 in Birmingham by Tony Iommi, guitar, Ozzy Osbourne, vocals, Geezer Butler, bass, and Bill Ward, drums. Influenced by the music of Blue Cheer, Cream, and Vanilla Fudge, they achieved several gold and platinum records in the 1970s. They are the pioneers of heavy metal along with other contemporary groups such as Deep Purple, Budgie, Coven, Pentagram, Sir Lord Baltimore and Led Zeppelin. Being one of the first and most influential heavy metal bands of all time, Black Sabbath helped develop the genre with releases such as Paranoid, an album that achieved 4 platinum certifications from the RIAA. Ronnie James Dio, former vocalist of Rainbow who recorded the albums Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules before leaving the group in 1982. The group would go on to include vocalists such as Ian Gillan, Glenn Hughes, Ray Gillan and Tony Martin during the 1980s and 1990s, and various bassists and drummers such as Vinny Appice, Neil Murray, Bev Bevan, Cozy Powell and Bobby Rondinelli. In 1992 Dio returned to the band, producing the third album as vocalist Dehumanizer. The original lineup reunited in 1997 and released a live album, Reunion. The song Iron Man won the Grammy Award in 2000, 30 years after its original release on Paranoid. Years later, the group, with its original lineup, was included in the list of the 100 greatest artists of all time, occupying number 85. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2006. The lineup that recorded Mob Rules, consisting of Iommi, Butler, Dio and Appice, reunited in 2006 under the name Heaven and Hell. After the breakup of the band Mythology in 1967, guitarist Tony Iommi and drummer Bill Ward began recruiting to form a blues rock band in Aston, Birmingham. The group was joined by bassist Geezer Butler and singer Ozzy Osbourne, who had played together in a band called Rare Breed. In 1968, the new group, which also included guitarist Jimmy Phillips and saxophonist Alan Aker Clark, was named the Polka Tulk Blues Company, a name taken from an Indian textile company. After shortening their name to Polka Tulk, the band changed it to Earth and continued as a quartet without Phillips and Clark. A cinema across the street from the band's rehearsal space was showing a 1963 horror film directed by Mario Bava, starring Boris Karloff, called Black Sabbath, The Three Faces of Fear. After this he wrote the lyrics for a song called Black Sabbath, inspired by the work of occult writer Dennis Wheatley. The band changed their name to Black Sabbath in August 1969. Black Sabbath signed in December 1969 and released their first single, Evil Woman, in January 1970. Black Sabbath, the band's debut album, was released on Friday, February 13, 1970. It reached number 8 on the UK Albums Chart and, upon its release in the US in May 1970, reached number 23 on the Billboard Hot 100-200. The first single from the album, Paranoid, was written at the last minute in the studio. The single was released before the album in September 1970 and reached number 4 in the UK charts, becoming the band's only top 10 single. Black Sabbath released their second album, Paranoid, in October 1970. Buoyed by the success of the single, the album climbed to number 1 in the UK. The US release was delayed until January 1971, as Black Sabbath were still charting when Paranoid was released in the UK. Paranoid entered the US top 10 in March 1971. The release of the second single, Iron Man. Although it failed to crack the top 40, Iron Man remains one of the band's most popular songs, as well as their highest charting single on the US charts. They embarked on a mini-tour of Oceania in late January 1971, with their first performances in New Zealand and Australia, the latter on February 1st as headliners at the historic Maiponga Pop Festival. Black Sabbath is widely regarded as one of the most influential heavy metal bands of all time. The band helped create the genre with such groundbreaking releases as Paranoid, an album that Rolling Stone magazine said changed music forever. Time magazine called Paranoid the birthplace of heavy metal, including it on its list of the 100 greatest albums of all time. MTV placed Black Sabbath at number 1 on its list of the 10 greatest heavy metal bands, while VH1 placed them at number 2 on its list of the 100 greatest hard rock artists.